Hey, and welcome back. We're going to be continuing our build of the North Coast Rocketry Hobgoblin mid-power rocket. This should be part 3 if I remember my numbers right. And we're going to be working on the fins. So in the last video, we built the motor mount and the glue is all set up. So I've already test fitted it into the rocket. And then I've put the fins on with just some tape, just to make sure they are lined up well with the slots. I've also drawn a line in the top here where the forward centering ring is, so I know where to put a glue line. And then according to the instructions, what you're going to do is you're going to put some glue up in the forwarding ring area. You'll slide the motor mount in, and then you'll put a glue line around the top of the fin slots to pick up that middle centering ring, and then we'll fill at the bottom ring whenever we put the motor mount on. I'm gonna go ahead and pop these fins off since they're just wobbling around. I'm gonna leave one in there just to hold the mount in place. But one thing I was really happy with was how well the retainer ring will fit on here. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it up like it would be set if we were actually loading a motor. It fits on here really nice. Lots of room, got plenty of room to turn it. It lays flush with the back of the rocket. This was not planned, but it just worked out really well. I figured it'd be sticking out a little bit, but no, it flushes. It's flush real nice with the bottom of the rocket. So I'm really happy with how this is gonna sit when it's on there. So let's go ahead and take our mount out. I do have a little bit of burr still on the bottom that I'm catching on, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more sanding on the bottom here. And let's see how well this fits. There we go. So that goes in real nice. Okay, so I told you wrong. We are going to go ahead, when we install this motor mount tube, we are going to put a bead of glue up here where that line is. Then we'll slide our tube in about 3 inches, and then we'll put epoxy along the bottom of the slot right here. So when we go in all the way, we'll pick up that glue and push it. So. All right, so let's go ahead and get our 15-minute epoxy mixed up and start gluing this thing. Okay, our epoxy is mixed up and ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and put our first bit in the tube, putting it right below that line I drew. Now this forwarding ring comes very close to the top of the tube, so you could actually just add a fillet after, but this will kind of, I think this will be a little bit better because you'll get the epoxy under the wood. It'll fill in the gaps under the wood. And I am going to, I've got a little bit on the tube here. Go ahead and wipe that down, just so nothing can get caught on that glue if it dries. All right, so, and let's go ahead and I'm going to bend our cable, tuck it in here so it's out of the way. I'm going to come in just a little bit. All right, and grab a piece of paper towel. Put a paper towel under here in case some glue drips out, because we're going around these slots. I don't really have a technique for this. I just put it on the stick and just start wiping. All right, so let's go ahead and start sliding this in. Go ahead and line up my slots. Where's my marks? There we go. All right, looks good up in the top. So let's do some fin checks here. Let's see, we are in a little bit too far. Pull it back just a little. There we go. That's nice. That was nice. That was nice. Just a little bit. Oops. Need to turn just a little bit. There we go. Nice. There. Good. I always have one little bit off here. Come on. There we go. Okay. All right. So our fin slots are aligned. Just eyeballing some of this. All right. Now we're going to wipe off some of the epoxy that got on the outside of the tube. We're going to let that set up, and then we'll start prepping the fins. So as I mentioned before, the fins don't really need too much finishing. They're really nice, a really nice quality plywood. So basically I'm going to just do some sanding sealer, a coat or two of sanding sealer. I'm going to do that in the garage. I won't be doing that on video. There's a lot of videos out already on how to apply sanding sealer. But what we are going to do is we're going to tape off part of the fin that gets inserted into the tube of the rocket, because we don't want any sanding sealer on that, because it's going to add thickness to the fin and it may not fit into our tubes anymore. So I'm just going to add some tape to all our fins and then do the sanding sealer. So after I've completed that, then we'll come back and we'll put the fins on the rocket. All right. That's all we need to do for each fin. So I've completed applying the sanding sealer to the fins. So just a couple shots here to show how I did it. I use sanding sealer from Minwax and just these little cheapy, I call them chip brushes or something like that. You can get a bunch of them pretty cheap, pretty much disposable. And then after I've applied the sanding sealer, I just rigged up a little way to let them dry vertically. So all the excess sanding sealer just basically dripped off. Then to sand them down, I just use my orbital sander. I have 320 grit on this, and what's nice is since you have the tabs on these fins, you can just hold the fin by the tab. I just put it on the edge of my workbench and then just run the orbital sander over it. Gets them really nice and smooth. So that was it. So let's go ahead and get these fins put on the rocket. All right, we're going to try switching angles and using a different camera. So to put the fins on, I use my guillotine. Obviously, not everyone has one of these, and it is not required for putting fins on. But even with slotted fins, you have to check the alignment on the fins. And I was able to get one of these guillotines, which are kind of hard to get right now. But I was able to find one for a decent price. So I went ahead and picked it up. This is a large one. So it'll do body tubes. The smallest body tube will be 1 3/4 inches, which really suffices for what I build. Anyway, so we're set up for the fins, and what I'm going to be using is the 15-minute epoxy on this, mainly because I want something that will set pretty quick, just to let the epoxy set up. So take the fin out here. I've just put some blue tape on the body tube just to keep the epoxy from running down the side. We're going to come back and put fillets over the end, so if a little bit gets on the tube, it's not too bad. I'm just mixing my epoxy here on a little piece of wax paper. So let's see. So we're just gonna put some on the edges, and we're doing all the edges, even the sides here, because we want every contact point we can get. We're not going to be able to do a fillet at the body tube level, so we do want to try and get as much strength that we can just on this. Now I have let the epoxy sit for a few minutes just so it can start hardening a little bit to try and prevent some of the running, but it still likes to try and go. One thing to note while I do this is you may have noticed that my fins are square. I used to be into tapering the fins and all that stuff, but now I like the look of it being square. I'm not really worried about drag. I'm not going for super high altitudes or anything like that. So now we're just going to slide this in. We're going to just push it down in place and let that grab. Just gonna wipe a little bit off with my fingers. So yeah, so that's the fins gonna set up, and then I'll do the other three. Obviously, I'm not gonna video all that, but then we'll come back and we'll put some fin fillets on it, and we'll be almost ready for painting this thing. Getting close.